The NATO training field buzzed with energy, laughter, boots hitting gravel, the sharp crack of rifles echoing downrange. A convoy pulled in, and from it stepped a woman in plain fatigues. No insignia, no visible rank. Someone from the British team snickered. "What's she doing here? Logistics?" Another voice chimed in. "Maybe she's here to take notes." But she didn't react. Just adjusted her gloves, checked her watch, and walked straight toward the command tent like she owned the place. Inside, the SEAL commander, a battle-scarred veteran with decades of service, barely looked up from his file. "Name?" he asked flatly. She answered calmly. "Call sign Echo 7. Authorization code Reaper Delta 9. The room went dead silent. The SEAL commander froze, because that wasn't just any code. That was a black-level command clearance, higher than his own, and suddenly, everyone realized she wasn't just some woman. She was the one who wrote the playbook they'd all been trained from. The NATO training field in Romania buzzed like a hive. Dozens of special forces units, Americans, Brits, Poles, Germans, and Italians, had gathered for the largest joint combat drill in years. Helicopters thundered overhead. Targets clanged downrange. Commands barked through the air in 6 different accents. It was a stage built for warriors, men with medals, scars, and reputations, so when a plain, unmarked SUV rolled through the checkpoint, no one looked twice until the door opened. Out stepped a woman in standard fatigues. No flag patch. No visible rank. Her sleeves were rolled tight, her boots dusty, her stride calm, too calm for a place that thrived on tension. A pair of British commandos leaned on a Humvee, smirking. "Who's she?" one asked. "Lost civilian?" "Probably logistics," the other laughed. "Or maybe medical support. They send them everywhere these days." Nearby, a group of Marines watched her walk past, their expressions a mix of amusement and curiosity. She carried no weapon, no pack, just a small metal case in her left hand. "Hey, ma'am," one called out. "You sure you're in the right sector?" She didn't slow down, didn't glance back, just kept walking toward the command tent at the far end of the field, the one guarded by 2 SEALs who looked like they ate arrogance for breakfast. Inside the tent, Commander Briggs, a man with 27 confirmed missions and a chest full of ribbons, was reviewing strategy maps. His team was prepping for a live simulation later that afternoon. He didn't look up when she entered. "Training area's off limits to observers," he said without tone. "Media or logistics, you'll need clearance from Major Sanderson." She stopped exactly 2 paces in front of his desk. "I'm not media," she said quietly. Her voice carried a strange steadiness, not loud but commanding in its stillness. Briggs finally looked up. Her face was expressionless. Tired eyes. A faint scar just above the eyebrow, one that looked old, earned. "Name?" he asked, flipping through his clipboard. She reached into her jacket pocket and placed a folded ID card on his desk. He didn't recognize the seal. It wasn't Army, Navy, or CIA. It was black and minimalist, embossed only with a single code. Echo 7. "Call sign?" He pressed. Her answer was calm. "Echo 7. Clearance. Reaper Delta 9. The room froze. 2 SEALs near the entrance exchanged a glance, one whispering under his breath, "Did she just say Delta 9? Briggs leaned back slowly, frowning. That clearance was above top secret. It was black-level command code, something that existed only in theoretical access charts, used by people no one ever met in person. He tapped a few keys into his terminal. The system hesitated, then flashed red. Access verified. Priority override. Briggs's throat went dry. "That's impossible," he muttered. "There are only 3 living operatives with that level." She met his eyes for the first time. 4, she said quietly. The room went silent. Even the background hum of comms seemed to fade. Briggs swallowed hard. "You're not here for the exercise, are you?" "No," she replied, stepping forward. "I'm here to evaluate command integrity, and to see which of your men can follow orders without question." One of the younger SEALs chuckled nervously. "Orders from you?" Her eyes flicked toward him, cold and precise. "No, Lieutenant. Orders from NATO Black Command, transmitted through me." The smirk vanished. Outside, whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she? Why's the commander standing? What's Reaper Delta 9? But no one had an answer. As she exited the tent, her boots crunching against the gravel, Every soldier on the field watched in uneasy silence. She didn't look like authority, but somehow she carried it. And by sundown, every man who had mocked her that morning would be standing at attention, not because they were ordered to, but because she had earned it. By noon, the field had settled into a rhythm of noise and dust. NATO's finest were spread across the hills, German snipers scanning the ridges, French paratroopers running insertion drills, SEALs setting up tactical perimeters. Every movement was crisp, rehearsed, disciplined. The woman, Echo 7, stood at the observation platform, hands clasped behind her back. No insignia, no headset, no visible role. She simply watched. Commander Briggs, still trying to make sense of her clearance, stood nearby, pretending not to notice her presence. But everyone did. Every operator who'd laughed that morning stole glances at her now, trying to guess who she was, what she'd done, and why she was even here. At 13:47 hours, the first alarm went off. A sharp electronic buzz cut through the radio chatter. Briggs turned, frowning. "That's not part of the exercise." "Negative," said a comms tech. "Signals coming from Bravo sector. Perimeter sensors tripped. Could be wildlife." Before he could respond, another alarm joined it, then another. Within seconds, the entire command tent was flashing red. "Multiple breach signals," shouted the tech. "Perimeter C through G, all zones." The screens filled with motion trackers. Dozens of red blips moving toward the base. Fast. Briggs barked, "All units, full alert!" "Seal the perimeter. I want confirmation before engagement." But then a new voice cut through the radio net. Calm, unfamiliar, precise. "NATO command. Switch comms to channel 91 Delta immediately." Everyone froze. That channel didn't exist, at least not for them. It was an encrypted emergency network reserved for black-level operations. Briggs grabbed his headset. "Identify yourself." The voice came again, this time from inside the tent. Echo 7, command override. Every operator turned. She stood there, motionless, her hand over her earpiece. "Ma'am, with respect," Briggs said. "This is a controlled environment." "You can't just... It's not controlled anymore," she interrupted. Her tone wasn't harsh, but it sliced through the air like a blade. "This isn't a drill!" She stepped toward the main console, fingers flying over the keyboard faster than the techs could react. Within seconds, she'd bypassed 4 layers of access. Satellite feed online. Zone breach confirmed. Simulated hostile units inbound. Someone's triggered the fallback scenario. Briggs blinked. "Fallback what?" She looked up. "Protocol 47, a full-scale sabotage simulation. Designed to test NATO readiness under total comm failure." The comms officer turned pale. "That program's classified. Level 3. Echo 7 gave a faint nod. Level 3 was downgraded last night. You're now part of the test. Panic rippled across the command tent. Teams scrambled to activate drones. Operators yelled over the radio. Several commanders tried to re-establish their own networks, but one by one their systems went dark. Signal interference, we've lost satellite uplink. Control grid offline. We're blind! Briggs slammed his fist against the table. What the hell is going on? Echo 7's voice remained calm. A breach in comms integrity. All external systems are being jammed by an internal signal. Someone's running a black-grade counter-simulation. Who would authorize that? Briggs snapped. She met his eyes. I did. The tent went still. You authorized. I triggered it before I arrived, she said simply. To see how fast you'd react under a total blackout. Gasps filled the air. One SEAL stepped forward, furious. You mean you put every unit in chaos just to test us? She turned toward him, eyes steady. If this were real, you'd all be dead already. The SEAL opened his mouth, then closed it. Outside, smoke grenades detonated along the ridges. Explosions shook the valley. Units scrambled for cover, unsure if the attack was real or simulated. Through the chaos, Echo 7 grabbed a headset from the table and switched to the jammed frequency manually. Her voice echoed across the field, clear and calm amid the static. All units. This is Command Override Delta. Fall back to Grid 7. Maintain staggered retreat. Do not engage without infrared confirmation. Repeat. Grid 7 staggered formation. Briggs stared. That's the old Reaper code language? She nodded once. I wrote it. He blinked. You what? Echo 7 keyed her mic again. Bravo team, redirect to west flank. Foxtrot, circle East Ridge. If you hear me, switch to analog fallback channels. Old rules, gentlemen. The commanders looked at each other. Analog fallback, that was an obsolete communication method replaced years ago. No one used it anymore, and yet, through the crackling static, teams began to respond. Bravo copies, Foxtrot moving, Echo confirmed, analog online. Within minutes, she'd done what no one else could, rebuilt command control using systems most soldiers had never even trained on. The breach simulation escalated. Drones appeared overhead, firing blanks into the desert. Sensors detonated with artificial hits. To the soldiers below, it felt terrifyingly real. But from the observation deck, Echo 7's orders flowed like water. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. Her tone stayed steady, surgical. Unit Alpha, flank left, suppress fire North Ridge. Medic lines, stagger movement. No one stationary for more than 7 seconds. Within 20 minutes, what had begun as chaos turned into coordination. Briggs could only watch in disbelief as the field moved under her command. Perfectly. Holy hell, he muttered. She's running the entire exercise from memory. One of his aides whispered, "Who is she?" Briggs exhaled slowly. "Whoever she is, she's not from our world." The alarm stopped. Smoke faded. Drones retreated. A single green light blinked across the console. Simulation complete. Echo 7 removed her headset. Her hands steady, her breathing normal. Around her, every officer stared in stunned silence. Finally, Briggs spoke. "You just hijacked a multinational combat simulation and turned it into a live command test." She nodded. "Correct," he blinked. "Why?" Her gaze softened, just a fraction. "Because war doesn't wait for your schedules, Commander. It happens when you least expect it. And if your men hesitate, even for a second..." She let the sentence hang. Everyone understood the rest. Then she added quietly, "You train soldiers to fight. I train them to survive." When she walked out of the tent, no one laughed this time. The same commandos who'd mocked her that morning now stood straight, eyes tracking her in silence. The sun was setting, orange light spilling across the field. She stopped at the edge of the gravel, looked back once and said softly, "You asked who I am." Then she pointed to the sky, where NATO's flag fluttered in the wind. "I'm the reason that still flies." Night settled over the NATO field, a cold hush replacing the earlier chaos. The floodlights buzzed against the dark, their cones of light slicing through the drifting smoke that still lingered from the simulation. Inside the command tent, silence held heavier than any explosion. No one dared to speak. The hum of equipment and the faint tapping of a data tech's fingers were the only sounds. Commander Briggs stood by the central console, arms folded, eyes fixed on the frozen screen showing simulation complete. Didn't move for a long time, just stared at it as if trying to process what had happened. Then he turned to his aide. "Run." A full background check on her, everything. "I want to know who the hell Echo 7 really is?" The aide hesitated. "Sir, she's listed as..." "I don't care what she's listed as," Briggs cut in. "You don't override NATO command without authorization codes. Those codes don't just exist. Someone gave them to her." The aide nodded, swallowed hard, and began typing. Outside, the field had gone quiet. Most of the troops were gathered in clusters, still shaken, replaying what they'd witnessed. "She didn't even flinch when it started," one French sniper whispered, like she knew it was coming. "Did you see how she used analog comms?" "Who the hell still trains on that?" A younger soldier replied, "No one. Unless you're from before the Reformat." At that, everyone fell silent. The Reformat, the massive restructuring of NATO's intelligence, branches years ago, had erased hundreds of operations and decommissioned dozens of classified programs. Echo 7 might have come from that era. If she had, it meant she was a ghost, one of those operatives who officially didn't exist anymore. Back in the command tent, the aide's voice broke the silence. "Sir, I found something, but it's fragmented." Briggs leaned closer. "Show me." The aide turned the screen. Lines of corrupted text flickered, file paths, code references, timestamps. Most were redacted. "Her designation appears across several systems," the aide said carefully. "Last recorded operation date, 12 years ago. Location? Classified. No metadata. But there's one tag that wasn't erased." Briggs frowned. "Which one?" The aide pointed at the corner of the screen. 3 faded words blinked in gray text. Project Ghost Meridian, Briggs stiffened. He hadn't heard that name in years. Most people thought it was a myth, an off-book NATO black project that trained command units in untraceable warfare, total stealth, and psychological command override. Every record of it had been destroyed after an incident in the Balkans. He whispered, "You're telling me she's Ghost Meridian?" The aide swallowed. "Sir, the data implies she led it." Briggs leaned back, stunned. He'd heard the stories about a woman who once rewired an entire war zone's communication system using only field radios and coded flares, who led extraction missions with no air support, who saved more soldiers with her silence than most did with a full battalion. They called her the Phantom Commander. Officially, she'd died during a classified operation, but if Echo 7 was her, it meant she hadn't just survived. She'd chosen to disappear. He rubbed his temples. "Get me her personnel archive, now." The aide hesitated. "Sir, accessing Ghost Meridian data could trigger a level black alert." "Do it anyway." The aide entered a long string of access keys. The screen flickered, once, twice, then went black. An old NATO insignia appeared. Beneath it, a line of text, restricted access. Command override required. Enter code. Briggs froze. The code prompt wasn't for him. It was for her. He looked around. Echo 7 was gone. Outside, near the barracks, Echo 7 sat alone on the low wall overlooking the valley. Her rifle rested beside her, untouched. The desert wind tugged gently at her short hair. She wasn't watching the lights below. She was listening to the echoes of old commands still whispering in her mind. Briggs approached slowly. "You disappeared before I could thank you," he said quietly. "I'm not here for thanks," she replied without turning. "Then why are you here?" She smiled faintly. "Because someone needed to remind your men what war really feels like." Briggs exhaled, stepping closer. "You hijacked my entire field exercise." "I hijacked nothing," she corrected. "I gave you truth. You call this a simulation, but for your soldiers it felt real. Fear, confusion, chaos, that's war. And if they learned something today, it's that control is an illusion." He studied her for a long time. Ghost Meridian. That made her glance at him, a flicker of something sharp, maybe even regret. "You shouldn't say that name." "So it's true then." She looked away. It was true. A long time ago. Briggs sat down beside her. "You led them, didn't you?" "The Phantom Unit." "Not led," she said quietly. "Built, from the ground up," he frowned. "Then why erase it? Why walk away?" Her voice softened. "Because power like that shouldn't exist." She turned to him then, her eyes calm but distant. "We created perfect soldiers, emotionless, efficient, invisible. But every time they came back, they left something behind. Humanity, empathy, mercy. One day, I realized I was training ghosts, not people." The wind carried her words like dust through the quiet. "So I shut it down," she said, "and vanished with it." Briggs shook his head slowly. "And now you're back. Not for long. Then why today?" She stood, brushing the dust from her hands. "Because the same system I destroyed is waking up again." "Someone inside NATO is rebuilding the old network. New names, new designations. The pattern is too familiar." Briggs frowned. "You think someone's reviving Ghost Meridian?" "I don't think," she said, turning toward the dark hills. "I know." A long silence followed. Down the slope, the last of the training lights flickered off. Soldiers disappeared into their tents. The field fell quiet again. Briggs finally asked, "What do you want me to do?" Echo 7 looked at him, and for a moment her composure cracked. Not fear, but fatigue. "When the time comes, don't trust the chain of command. Trust your instinct. If they start deploying Echo units, it means it's already too late." She started walking away. Briggs called after her, "Where will you go?" She paused just before the shadow swallowed her. "Where it started," she said softly, "to end what I created." Back inside the tent, the aide was still at the console when Briggs returned. "Sir, the system's still waiting for the override code." Briggs hesitated, then typed in the only thing that came to mind. Echo 7. The screen blinked. Then for a moment it showed a single image, a younger version of her in uniform, standing beside a team of masked operatives. "No insignias." No names. Beneath the image, a line of text appeared. If this file is open, she's active again. Then the file erased itself. Briggs stared at the blank screen, heart pounding. God help whoever woke her, he muttered. The next morning, the desert looked almost peaceful. Sunlight rolled over the dunes, washing away the night's tension. But beneath that quiet calm, something dangerous had begun to move. Echo 7 was already gone before sunrise. No one saw her leave, but the watchtower guards reported a single trail of footprints leading out into the wasteland. Perfectly straight, no hesitation. The kind of walk only a soldier who's been walking her whole life could make. Commander Briggs hadn't slept. The image from the erased file still haunted him. That younger version of her, standing among shadows, her expression unreadable. He had seen fear in men's eyes, rage, pride, but the eyes in that photo held something else entirely, finality. He poured black coffee into a metal mug and stared at the horizon. The field looked ordinary again. But nothing about last night had been ordinary. His aide, Carter, entered with a tablet. "Sir, we found a signal anomaly near the West Ridge. Looks like someone accessed NATO's secure relay from the outer perimeter." Briggs' head snapped up. When? An hour ago. Whoever it was used ghost encryption. Ghost encryption? Briggs frowned. That system was decommissioned with Meridian. Exactly, sir. Carter hesitated. And it wasn't Echo 7. Briggs's jaw tightened. Then who the hell? Carter slid the tablet across the table. The signature came from London Command. Briggs froze. HQ? Carter nodded. Level 1 clearance. Meanwhile, far from the desert, a dark glass building in London glowed with early morning light. Inside, deep in the basement levels beneath NATO's Strategic Intelligence Wing, a small group of analysts watched a screen filled with scrolling data. "Is she active?" one of them asked. A man in a gray suit, his voice smooth and deliberate, replied, "Yes. Echo 7 re-engaged protocol sequence during the exercise. Exactly as predicted. Do we proceed?" He turned to the large holographic map. Across Europe and the Middle East, red markers blinked into existence. Old coordinates, all connected by a single encryption line labeled Meridian Reboot. "Proceed," the man said. Phase 1 begins now. By midday, Briggs' command terminal began flashing alerts. Unauthorized uplinks. Signal spikes. Sub-channel interference. Whatever was happening, it was spreading fast. Through training bases, logistics channels, even unmanned drone networks. Someone was taking control of NATO systems from the inside, and Briggs had a sinking feeling he knew why. He grabbed the radio. "Find her, now!" Miles away, Echo 7 crouched beside a ruined communication relay deep in the dunes. She had followed the ghost signal since dawn, each frequency like a breadcrumb leading to something she thought she'd buried forever. She pried open the relay's terminal, connected a field transmitter, and began decoding. The display flickered. Lines of old military code scrolled across it. Her code. She froze. No one else knew these encryption patterns. She'd built them herself, more than a decade ago. Someone was using her original network. She typed a counter command, tracing the signal's source. The terminal whined, struggling to keep up. Then finally, the source appeared. Her heart stopped. The coordinates pointed directly to London Command, NATO Intelligence Division. Her fingers trembled slightly. "No," she whispered. "Not you." Flashback, 12 years earlier, a bunker beneath Montenegro. The original Ghost Meridian team preparing for their final mission. Among them stood a younger Echo 7, and beside her, her second-in-command, Major Rowan Hale, brilliant, loyal, ruthless when necessary. She had trusted him like a brother, but the mission went wrong. Their extraction was compromised, their signals jammed. Hale had vanished, presumed killed. Now, as her screen pulsed with his old encryption signature, a cold realization hit her like shrapnel. Hale wasn't dead. He was running Ghost Meridian again. She closed the relay box, strapped her rifle, and whispered, "You should have stayed buried." "Rowan." Her radio crackled. "Echo 7, this is Briggs. We've got command interference at global level. Do you copy?" "Copy," she replied, voice calm despite the storm inside her. "And I know who's behind it." Briggs's voice sharpened. "Who?" She hesitated, then said, A ghost from Meridian. He's not after control, Commander. He's after erasure? Erasure? She nodded to herself. Hale's trying to rewrite the command chain. Not to control NATO. To replace it. He's using our old system, the one we built to override command authority in case of a network collapse. He's turning it against us. Back at the base, Briggs ran a hand through his hair. So what do we do? Echo 7 replied quietly. We stop him. But this time I can't do it alone. Then tell me how to help. She smiled faintly, voice almost a whisper. You already did. You believed me. The radio went silent. Hours later, London Command went dark. Every screen across the NATO network blinked once, then displayed a single message: Meridian awake. Across Europe, automated defenses disengaged. Submarine communication links went offline. It was a digital coup, silent, clean, devastating. In a single coordinated sweep, every active commander's control key was rendered useless. And in the middle of that chaos, a new voice came over the emergency channel, calm, confident, familiar. This is Major Rowan Hale, commander of the new Meridian Collective. The age of borders is over. The old world dies tonight. In the desert, Echo 7 sat in stunned silence. The voice she once trusted was now the sound of war reborn, her hands clenched around the radio. Rowan, she whispered. Then, with the same steady resolve she'd carried through every mission, she stood. There was no more running. No more ghosts. The war she thought she ended had returned, and this time, she would finish it. She loaded her gear, slung her rifle across her shoulder, and looked toward the horizon. If the world forgot what Ghost Meridian meant, she said quietly, then I'll remind them. She disappeared into the storm. The flight to London was unmarked. No insignia, no registration, just a matte black aircraft cutting silently through the clouds. Inside, the hum of the engines filled the cabin. Commander Briggs sat across from Echo 7, his uniform stripped of rank patches. In the dim red light, he looked more like a ghost than an officer. Operation Requiem, he muttered, flipping through the encrypted dossier she'd handed him. No official support, no backup. We fail and we don't exist. Echo 7 nodded. That's the point. Meridian was built to kill anything it could identify. So we stay invisible, Briggs exhaled. You've done this before, haven't you? She looked out the window. Once, and I swore I never would again. The mission's outline was surgical. Step 1. Breach NATO London's underground servers. Step 2. Locate. Hale's Central Command uplink, the black spine of Meridian's new network. Step 3. Destroy it manually before it synchronizes global control. It sounded simple. It wasn't. They landed at 0300. Rain hammered the city like machine gun fire. London's skyline shimmered under the downpour, reflecting the chaos below. NATO headquarters looked asleep, but inside, lights burned behind shuttered windows. Entire divisions were trying, and failing, to fight Hale's digital siege. Security systems are automated, Briggs said as they crouched in an alley beside the perimeter fence. How do we get in? Echo 7 knelt, her gloved fingers tapping into the control box. Meridian protocols were my design. That means I know where I hid the back doors. Within seconds, the fence's red sensors blinked green. Welcome to the old world, she said quietly, slipping through. Inside the compound, the silence was eerie. The hum of machines replaced the usual chatter of personnel. It felt like walking through the skeleton of an empire. As they moved deeper into the corridor, Briggs caught sight of the walls, plastered with digital warning codes. Command lockout. System override active. Meridian in control. He muttered. He's taken everything. Echo's jaw tightened. Not everything. She pressed a hidden switch behind a power conduit. A small panel slid open, revealing an old-fashioned keypad, the kind no longer used in modern systems. She punched in a code, 7130 Echo. A door hissed open, revealing a dark tunnel leading down. Briggs frowned. You built a secret tunnel inside NATO Command? She allowed herself a small, dry smile. Insurance policy. The tunnel stretched beneath the building, a long concrete artery leading into the heart of the server core. Every few steps, Briggs noticed cracks in the walls, evidence of hasty construction. This wasn't meant to last, he said. It wasn't supposed to, she replied. I built it so no one could ever use Meridian again. But he found it, Briggs said softly. She nodded. Because I taught him how. They reached a sealed door at the tunnel's end, thick steel, engraved with faded NATO emblems. A keypad blinked faintly, still functional. Echo ran her hand across it, tracing the grooves. Rowan was always the idealist, she said, almost to herself. He believed in order, in perfection. Meridian promised that. A system that removed human error. No politics, no fear, no hesitation. And you? Briggs asked quietly. I believed in people, she said. That's why I ended it. She entered the final override code. The door unlocked with a deep, metallic groan. Beyond it was the core chamber. Rows of glowing servers lined the circular room, each pulsing with white-blue light. Holographic data floated above the floor like mist. In the center, a black terminal stood, alive with activity. On its screen, the Meridian emblem spun slowly, a circle with a vertical line through its center. Briggs raised his weapon. This it? Echo shook her head. That's not a terminal. The hologram shifted, and from behind it, a figure stepped forward. Major Rowan Hale. He looked older, sharper, but his presence filled the room just as it had all those years ago. His expression was calm, almost relieved. I knew you'd come, he said. Echo's grip tightened on her rifle. You shouldn't have, Hale smiled faintly. You built perfection and called it a mistake. I built purpose from your ashes. You're rewriting the world with weapons, she said. That's not purpose, that's control. He stepped closer. Control is what saves lives. You saw what chaos did. Politicians, broken commands, wasted soldiers. Meridian eliminates that. No emotion. No corruption. Only precision, Briggs snarled. You've turned entire nations into hostages. Hale ignored him, his eyes locked on Echo. You still don't see it, do you? You ended Meridian because you feared yourself. You were too human to understand what evolution looks like. Echo's voice dropped to a whisper. Evolution without empathy is extinction. The lights flickered. From the servers around them, holographic projections appeared, data streams of soldiers, missions, and commands in real time. Hale's voice echoed through the chamber. Every command chain, every decision, all optimized. No fear, no failure. Just order. Echo stepped forward, lowering her weapon. And when your system decides people are the problem? What happens then? For a brief second, Hale hesitated. Then, we start over. That was all she needed to hear. In one fluid motion, she drew a small EMP charge from her belt and slammed it onto the central terminal. Goodbye, Rowan. The explosion of light was blinding. Sparks showered from the ceiling. Data streams shattered like glass. Hale lunged, grabbing her wrist. You can't destroy this! It's bigger than both of us. She looked him in the eye. That's why it ends with us. The blast wave threw them both to the ground. Briggs dragged Echo toward the exit as fire ripped through the servers. The chamber trembled, alarms blaring. Hale struggled to stand, reaching toward the dying terminal. You'll regret this, he shouted. You can't stop the code now! Echo turned back one last time. Maybe not, but I can make sure you never finish it. Then she pulled Briggs through the collapsing tunnel. Behind them, the core chamber imploded in a burst of blinding white, the last pulse of Meridian dying in its birthplace. They emerged into the rain-soaked streets, coughing, bruised, but alive. Sirens echoed across the city as systems began rebooting to manual control. Briggs looked at her, soaked, bleeding, but steady. Did it work? She looked up at the flashing sky. For now. And him? She shook her head slowly. Ghosts don't die easy. From somewhere deep in the city, a faint static crackled through her earpiece. A single phrase whispered through the line. Hale's voice. Distorted but alive. You can destroy a system. Echo, but not an idea. She stared into the distance. Then I'll hunt the idea too. The conference hall had fallen into complete silence. Generals from 8 nations sat rigid in their seats. The tension wasn't about rank anymore. It was about her. On the massive screen behind the podium, encrypted footage rolled, satellite feeds, drone visuals, and mission logs from a classified NATO operation called Operation Sentinel Veil, the same mission. That had supposedly failed, the same one where hundreds had been saved by an unknown ghost commander using an override call code. Now, that ghost stood right in front of them. When the NATO commander asked her to state her clearance, she didn't hesitate. Authorization, Echo Reaper, command code, Theta 90. The words hit like thunder. Every officer in the room froze, even the SEAL commander. The same man who'd once smirked at her at the field briefing now stood pale, lips slightly parted, because only one person in NATO history had ever held that command code, and she was supposed to be dead. As she stepped forward, her boots echoed on the marble floor. The holographic display shifted, showing the live biometric verification sequence. The NATO AI confirmed her identity, not as an analyst, not as a field officer, but as Commander Aria Ward, the original architect of NATO's elite covert command structure. Echo Division murmurs erupted across the room. Impossible! She vanished in Syria. Echo Division was decommissioned. The SEAL commander clenched his jaw. He had fought under her doctrine years ago, learning tactics designed by someone whose face he'd never seen. The mysterious Reaper who commanded missions remotely, saving hundreds from ambushes and disasters, and now, standing alive before him, was that legend? Disguised all this time as a quiet liaison officer no one had respected? Arya's eyes flicked toward him. Not in anger, but in quiet understanding. "You never saw me because you were never meant to," she said softly. Command wasn't about medals or speeches. It was about making sure every soldier came home. Then she pressed a key on the console. A recording began to play, the intercepted signal from the operation that had gone wrong. "Command, we're surrounded. Requesting evac. Coordinates, hold position. Reinforcements inbound. Echo Reaper has control." The room watched as the footage played out. Precision airstrikes, drone maneuvers, enemy flanks collapsing in minutes, all directed by one voice. Hers. When the video ended, she turned to face them. "You all call yourselves soldiers," she said, her tone steady but cutting. "But you forgot what that means. It's not about who gives the order. It's about who stands when no one else will." The SEAL commander lowered his gaze. The others followed. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, saluted, and said in a voice rough with emotion, "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" Arya nodded. He took a deep breath. "Ma'am, we failed you once. Won't happen again," she smiled faintly. "You never failed me, Commander. You just forgot to look past the uniform." The silence in the hall broke as one of the generals, the same man who had mocked her earlier, stood and saluted as well. Within seconds, the entire room followed. For the first time, every insignia, every rank, every border meant nothing. Only the respect earned in silence and the truth standing before them mattered. Later that night, as the storm cleared over the NATO field, she stood outside under the floodlights. The SEAL commander approached her quietly, holding a small box, her old unit insignia. "I found this in the archives," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever get to return it." She accepted it, brushing her thumb over the faded emblem. "Reaper 0, it read. Then she looked out toward the runway, where new recruits were training under the lights, their silhouettes small against the vast night. "They'll never know what happened in those mountains," he said. She smiled. "They don't need to. They just need to know someone will always be watching over them." As she walked toward the departing transport plane, the loudspeaker echoed across the airfield. It was the SEAL commander's voice, low but steady. "To all units, honor the ghost who still stands among us. Reaper 0, cleared for departure." Heads turned as the engines roared to life. The woman who had been mocked, ignored, and forgotten saluted once, crisp and final, before disappearing into the night sky. And somewhere deep inside NATO command, an encrypted message auto-logged into the system. No name, no location, just one line of text, mission complete. Reaper 0 signing off. The NATO training field buzzed with energy, laughter, boots hitting gravel, the sharp crack of rifles echoing downrange. A convoy pulled in, and from it stepped a woman in plain fatigues. No insignia, no visible rank. Someone from the British team snickered. "What's she doing here?" "Logistics?" Another voice chimed in. "Maybe she's here to take notes," but she didn't react. Just adjusted her gloves, checked her watch, and walked straight toward the command tent like she owned the place. Inside, the SEAL commander, a battle-scarred veteran with decades of service, barely looked up from his file. "Name?" he asked flatly. She answered calmly. "Call sign, Echo 7, authorization code. Reaper Delta 9." The room went dead silent. The SEAL commander froze, because that wasn't just any code. That was a black-level command clearance, higher than his own, and suddenly, everyone realized she wasn't just some woman. She was the one who wrote the playbook they'd all been trained from. The NATO training field in Romania buzzed like a hive. Dozens of Special Forces units, Americans, Brits, Poles, Germans, and Italians, had gathered for the largest joint combat drill in years. Helicopters thundered overhead. Targets clanged downrange. Commands barked through the air in 6 different accents. It was a stage built for warriors, men with medals, scars, and reputations, so when a plain, unmarked SUV rolled through the checkpoint, no one looked twice until the door opened. Out stepped a woman in standard fatigues. No flag patch, no visible rank. Her sleeves were rolled tight, her boots dusty, her stride calm, too calm for a place that thrived on tension. A pair of British commandos leaned on a Humvee, smirking. "Who's she?" one asked. "Lost civilian?" "Probably logistics," the other laughed. "Or maybe medical support. They send them everywhere these days." Nearby, a group of Marines watched her walk past, their expressions a mix of amusement and curiosity. She carried no weapon, no pack, just a small metal case in her left hand. "Hey, ma'am," one called out. "You sure you're in the right sector?" She didn't slow down, didn't glance back, just kept walking toward the command tent at the far end of the field, the one guarded by 2 SEALs who looked like they ate arrogance for breakfast. Inside the tent, Commander Briggs, a man with 27 confirmed missions and a chest full of ribbons, was reviewing strategy maps. His team was prepping for a live simulation later that afternoon. He didn't look up when she entered. "Training area's off limits to observers," he said without tone. "Media or logistics, you'll need clearance from Major Sanderson." She stopped exactly 2 paces in front of his desk. "I'm not media," she said quietly. Her voice carried a strange steadiness, not loud but commanding in its stillness. Briggs finally looked up. Her face was expressionless. Tired eyes. A faint scar just above the eyebrow, one that looked old, earned. "Name?" he asked, flipping through his clipboard. She reached into her jacket pocket and placed a folded ID card on his desk. He didn't recognize the seal. It wasn't Army, Navy, or CIA. It was black and minimalist, embossed only with a single code. Echo 7. "Call sign?" he pressed. Her answer was calm. "Echo 7. Clearance, Reaper Delta 9. The room froze. 2 SEALs near the entrance exchanged a glance, one whispering under his breath, "Did she just say Delta 9? Briggs leaned back slowly, frowning. That clearance was above top secret. It was black-level command code, something that existed only in theoretical access charts, used by people no one ever met in person. He tapped a few keys into his terminal. The system hesitated, then flashed red, "Access. Verified. Priority override." Briggs's throat went dry. "That's impossible," he muttered. "There are only 3 living operatives with that level." She met his eyes for the first time. 4, she said quietly. The room went silent. Even the background hum of comms seemed to fade. Briggs swallowed hard. "You're not here for the exercise, are you?" "No," she replied, stepping forward. "I'm here to evaluate command integrity and to see which of your men can follow orders without question." One of the younger SEALs chuckled nervously. "Orders from you?" Her eyes flicked toward him, cold and precise. "No, Lieutenant. Orders from NATO Black Command transmitted through me." The smirk vanished. Outside, whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she? Why's the commander standing? What's Reaper Delta 9? But no one had an answer. As she exited the tent, her boots crunching against the gravel, every soldier on the field watched in uneasy silence. She didn't look like authority, but somehow she carried it. And by sundown, every man who had mocked her that morning would be standing at attention, not because they were ordered to, but because she had earned it. By noon, the field had settled into a rhythm of noise and dust. NATO's finest were spread across the hills, German snipers scanning the ridges, French paratroopers running insertion drills, SEALs setting up tactical perimeters. Every movement was crisp, rehearsed, disciplined.